Yo, what's up everybody, it's FUTC here. I welcome you back to another episode of Felix Makes a YouTube Video instead of studying for his exams. Okay, let's get into it. Let me just get my my recording voice ready. This is the Fuji X-E1. No, I'm just kidding, of course. I can't do that with a straight face. Okay, let's get into it. This is the Fujifilm X-E1, one of Fujifilm's first proper mirrorless cameras, and it was released in 2012, 10 years ago. That makes it one of the early day first generation mirrorless cameras, and today we're gonna check out if it's any good. This actually isn't my camera, let me explain. I recently walked past my local camera store in my city, and in the window I saw this Fujifilm X-E1 sitting there for a price of 199 euro. I thought, wow, that sounds like an amazing deal, so I went inside to check it out. The guy behind the counter said that this was actually their demo model for ages, and they're selling it now because, yeah, it's gotten a bit old now, and they actually sell it with a 2-year warranty, and that's pretty crazy because that's the same warranty you get on new cameras. So getting a 10-year-old used camera with a 2-year warranty is like insane. But yeah, the price was pretty amazing, so I thought about buying it and making a video about it and then selling it again. But then I remembered that my roommate was actually looking to buy his first camera. So I thought this would pretty much be perfect for his first camera. So I got home and I told him about it, and he said, yeah, okay, I trust you on this, you know a lot about cameras, and if you think this is a good deal, then I'm gonna buy it, and he did. But to be honest, I didn't really know if it was gonna be any good, because I've never tried any Fujifilm cameras from that year or from that era, and I was, yeah, I don't know, I was kind of just curious to try it, so I just told him, yeah, buy it, it's a good deal, and I was just really curious to try it and test it. So, moral of the story is, if you don't have enough money to buy more cameras, then just manipulate your friends into doing it for you. No, I'm just kidding, I think. But I also knew that if he wasn't happy with it, he could still sell it later on for pretty much the same. But luckily for us, that also means that I now get to test the Fujifilm X-E1 and evaluate if it's still a good budget option now 10 years after release. To test this camera, I took it to a local fair that was happening in my city. I have no idea, to be honest, why it was there. My phone just fell, okay. Just as a warning, the rest of this video will contain some B-roll from that fair, including some flashing lights, so if you're sensitive to that, please don't watch any further. I used the XC35mm f2 and screwed my DIY Pro Mist filter to the front again, giving that bloom effect. With all of those lights, I already knew this was the perfect place for that look. As I continued to take a billion photos of this Ferris wheel, I also tried to do some handheld long exposures as it was rotating. All of these images were edited with Joe Allen's Urban Stone Lightroom presets. I'm a huge fan of his and I love the presets. Unfortunately, I can't use any of the Fujifilm specific versions of these Lightroom presets because they use the Classic Chrome profile, and this camera doesn't actually have Classic Chrome yet. Actually, it has barely any of the popular film simulations, but it really doesn't matter that much because you can just edit the RAWs as with any other camera as well. The fair was a really good place to test the lowlight capabilities of this camera because we had a really harsh contrast between the bright parts of the image and the dark sky behind that. The lowlight performance of the X-E1 is pretty good for the age, I would say. At this size it's fine, but if you zoom in farther you will see a bit of weird artifacts around any bright parts. Of course the bloom effect is due to the filter, but in the bloom and in the carts of the Ferris wheel you can see some noise, but for ISO 3200 it's actually not that bad considering the age of this camera. This is an unedited test photo at ISO 6400 and it still looks pretty good. There definitely is noise, but it's not as distracting and it's pretty fine grained. I'd say this is still totally usable. My old Nikon D5200 would produce horrible color noise above ISO 1250 or so, and that was released in January 2013, shortly after the X-E1. So the X-E1's ISO performance compared to other cameras from that era is really good. There is no distracting color noise in the dark sky or anything in these shots from the X-E1. This is probably also due to Lightroom getting better and better at handling noise, but all in all, very good low light performance considering the age, I'd say. I'm really happy with this shot, especially with the bloom filter. It looks really great in my opinion. I might even put this shot in my portfolio. At 16 megapixel, the X-Trans1 sensor is actually pretty far behind the competition from that time. The Nikon D5200, which I just mentioned, had a APS-C 24 megapixel sensor, so the same size sensor but 8 megapixel more. But the X-E1 has the benefit that it's a lot smaller and more compact than DSLRs from that time. And 16 megapixel is still more than enough in my opinion. The build quality is actually quite nice. It doesn't feel as premium as my X-T30, I think because it's slightly less heavy and less dense. It is also, as the X-E line has continued to be, a very compact build with no protruding viewfinder, no big grips or anything like that. It's pretty much just a point-and-shoot sized square. As a recommendation for its first lens, I told my roommate to get the X-T35 f2. I've just made a video on that, go check that out if you're interested, and it's an outstanding lens, despite it being the cheapest first-party lens you can buy. The next morning, I also took the X-E1 out for a quick trip to the supermarket for some street photography. Luckily, out of nowhere the sun started shining and I had some great light. I thought this might be the perfect opportunity to try the black and white film simulation in the X-E1. It actually isn't even called acros yet as on newer Fujifilm cameras, but it looks pretty good, and these are the JPEGs straight out of camera. Mirrorless cameras from that time have one big problem. Technology moves so fast, and mirrorless cameras are basically like smartphone technology and camera technology fused into one. So 10 years ago, you basically had like 2012 smartphone technology fused together with a camera. Would you really want to use a 10-year-old smartphone today? You probably wouldn't, right? So what about the X-E1? I'm not gonna lie, this is a relatively slow camera. Startup time is actually surprisingly fast, but the rest of the operation isn't as snappy as newer cameras. It doesn't really matter what shutter speed you're using, the viewfinder blackout when taking a photo seems to be the same every time, whether you are using a shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second or 1/30th. Autofocus is decent, I would say, but it sometimes misses. Sadly, it missed this shot, but I would still say it has a good hit rate. A decent DSLR from that time will have better autofocus, but the X-E1's autofocus is definitely sufficient. The X-E1 doesn't feel as responsive as the X-T30, but that's also 7 years newer and around 3 times the price on the used market. So not really a fair comparison. Comparing the X-E1 to other cameras in that price and age range brings a totally different value proposition. One contender for that comparison could be the Nikon D2X. That's a camera I just made a video on. I bought it for €150 and was released in 2005. The D2X, being an old school professional DSLR, is super fast. Because there isn't that much technology strapped to it, there isn't anything that could slow it down. The X-E1 on the other hand simply is a first generation mirrorless camera. Companies were just starting to figure those out after spending a decade perfecting the DSLR. The X-E1 has the big benefit of being crazy small compared to the D2X and also having a lot better low light performance and a higher resolution thanks to a way newer sensor. To conclude, the X-E1 doesn't have the fastest autofocus or the highest resolution, but for $200 it really doesn't have to. For that price you're getting a super solid everyday camera that is really compact if you combine it with something like the X-T35, and it can easily fit into any jacket pocket or small bag. And generally it does what it's supposed to do. It takes photos, and for $200 you really can't complain, because we live in a world where €500 lenses are still considered entry level. I think finding a comparable camera around that €200 or dollar mark isn't an easy task, but if you have any recommendations, please let me know down below and I'll make sure to check them out. So yeah, that's basically it. I fed my camera addiction with another test today, and I hope you've taken something from this as well. I think this camera is a really decent budget option, and if you're looking to buy your first camera, this is definitely a good buy. If you enjoyed this video, it would be really nice if you could leave a like on this video or even subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see more videos like this, I have some more like somewhere here, somewhere. So yeah, see you in the next one and have a good one. Bye bye.